Okay, so it's near enough to 5 o'clock. I apologize to people who will be joining us slightly later potentially. As some of you, hopefully all of you already know, my name is Alistair Reid. I'm a journalist at Press Association, which is the UK national news agency. And this is the fourth session of Becoming an Expert Fact Checker and Hoax-Buster. Today we'll be talking about geolocation. Before we get started, I just want to say, of course, as normal, I'm not representing Press Association here. I'm doing this independently with TOL, based on some of the courses that I've run with them before. And in my previous work job, I was managing editor at an organization called First Draft, which really focused on this kind of thing around misinformation, verification, social news gathering, all those topics which are excellent skills now for journalists to have, and for everyday online citizens to have, to be able to navigate the online world of information without getting tricked, without believing or getting duped into believing potentially things which aren't true. Let's get started. I'll just share my screen. Okay. Yep. So, session 4 of Becoming an Expert Fact Checker and Hoax-Buster. So a quick recap. The very first session, we looked at some different types and the sources of information and how we have a kind of scale of intent around the different things that we see online, from satire, which is just people making jokes, all the way up to things which are completely fabricated and completely not true. The week after that, in session 2, we looked at some of an introduction into some of the tools and the techniques and how to understand what we're looking at and debunk stories, and also how to set up to monitor how these stories spread. Last time, not last week, of course, because that was the UK election. The week before that, we looked at some of the introductory tools, that getting a hand on finding the original version of a picture or video, which is often one of the most common types of misinformation, is when people use an old picture or an old video and they say it is something new. And also just some introductory questions around investigating a source. This week, we're going to be looking at geolocation. So that's when there was a picture or video in particular, figuring out where it came from. Sometimes if a picture or video, if you can't find the original online already, but you still have questions, figuring out where it happened is a really important part of being able to verify it and not get tricked, and to understand what the truth is. And we'll also be looking at the time and the date and understanding how that can play a role in misinformation, especially on social media. And also understanding shadows. This is important because when hoaxers make again, a picture or video which is fake, which is not true, which they manipulate, and they might use some image editing software, shadows and reflections is something often they get wrong, and it's important to know what to look for there. As we go ahead, next week we'll be looking at some of the best practices in actually communicating this. So all of this before this week and the previous weeks is about how to tell if something is true or not. Next week we'll be looking at how to communicate that effectively to other people, and to audiences if you're a journalist, and generally online, because if it's all fine if you can spot misinformation for yourself, but a really important part is to actually communicate that to more people and to make the truth as shareable as the lie. I'm really happy to say that we've got our guest speakers confirmed for the last few weeks. On the 29th in the session 6, we'll have Fergus Bell, who he used to be the social media editor and UGC editor for, which is user-generated content for the Associated Press. He's now he's a world-renowned expert and has his own consultancy now, but he'll be talking about misinformation and breaking news. The week after that, we'll be looking at that final step of investigating the websites and the networks and the individuals who make and distribute misinformation. And then in the last session, we'll have Claire Wardle, who is the managing director and research lead for First Draft. And she'll be talking about misinformation and elections. She has worked in the US election last year, in the French election this year, and the recent UK election to work together with different groups to understand and spot misinformation and track some of the sources. I just wanted to have a quick recap before we go ahead on what we're talking about with verification. Some of the things which we talked about last time was, sorry, I'm just going to close the window here as we have some dogs making noise outside. 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. So we talked previously about reverse image search, and this is looking for an image if it has appeared online before. One of the most common examples that we see of misinformation is when people take a picture that's appeared online before, somewhere in a story or somewhere on a website, and they say that it is from a new event, or they say it is from a different event. And this is quite easy to spot using reverse image search, which is checking to see if that picture has appeared online before. And we can do that with Google Images, with TinEye, or with one of my favorites, a Chrome plugin called RevEye. Obviously, one of the biggest things is just to check for other reports which might say or show the same thing. If you have a story which you're suspicious about, checking to see if it has been reported elsewhere and looking at who is reporting it is a really important step. We also want to look for official sources or data that can support a certain story or a claim. Yes, sometimes official sources will try to lie, but official sources, that doesn't mean the government or police. That can mean other, maybe community groups, anyone that might have more information about this outside of the source which has said it that you are looking at. You also want to look at a source's history, the comments, and the replies around a story or around a picture or a video, and see what people are saying about that already. We also, if you can do this, this is more for journalists in newsrooms, but if you see a picture in a news situation and you can get the original file, you can ask them to email you the picture, the photo, then you can look at the EXIF data and you can check that for any time or location information. Also with a website, you can do a whois search on the website or domain names. We touched on that briefly, and we'll do more of that when we're looking at websites and networks in the future. And also, this is what we're going into a lot today, is looking at any visual clues you might see in a picture or a video to give you an idea of whether the location is true or not. And that can be things like roads and buildings and landmarks and the landscape, rivers or hills or mountains. And any signs like business or shop signs you might see, and the shadows, which we'll be talking about again as well today. And then you see if you can find that on public maps. So those are the ones that we covered in more detail. Finding the original, of course, you can do things like using the reverse image search that we talked about. You can take a screenshot of any image or meme and to cut out the text. Sometimes you'll see people sharing a picture with some text around it, and they will say what it is there. If you're not sure about it, take a screenshot and then do a reverse image search with that. You can do that with a video as well. When we talked about sources last week, we talked a lot about how you verify a source. And this is something that we produced at First Draft when I was there as part of the verification guide, when you can look at the different usernames which people use and search around to see if you can find them on other networks. Looking for their name. You're doing a reverse image search, like I just talked about, on the user's profile picture, and looking at any blogs or websites that they might give there as well. And all of this actually came into use last week when I was covering the election here in the UK. We had our general election. We tried to choose a new government. That hasn't quite happened yet. But I found this person sharing reports during the election, and it was a fake account. And the reports they were sharing were not true. As you can see in the tweets here, they say UKIP EDL types, and UKIP and EDL are on the far right of politics here in the UK. It says UKIP and EDL types are intimidating women and minorities, ethnic minorities, outside polling stations. Now, this was none of these reports were true, and this example is an excellent example of a fake account, of a fake source, someone trying to spread lies. The picture that they gave in the Twitter profile was just a stock image picture, and I did a reverse image search of that picture, and it was just, used for advertising in stock image pictures of like a businessman. They just took that picture and put it on this Twitter account. The name there, BBC Elliot Meck, so he's trying to pretend that he's a reporter, but there were no references there. There is no Elliot Mecklenburg at the BBC. If you look at the join date there, it says June 2017, so it's a brand new account. It was just set up. It's really new. And those reports there of the EDL types intimidating women, and the second one, which says a pattern developing of voters being turned away. Let's hope this is incompetence and not malice. None of that was true. There were no other reports. So this was a really great example of someone in an election, in a breaking news situation, trying to spread lies, and the different checks and the different pieces of information which told me that this was fake, this was misinformation. So today we're talking about geolocation. So that's generally with pictures or videos, and being able to tell if they are true or not. This is very important in all kinds of situations, in both if people are saying that an event is happening or some kind of story is happening and they give a picture or video, but you need to be sure if that is true or not. So how do we do that? One of the biggest things, if we do a reverse image search and we find nothing, that doesn't mean that it's true. It just means that there's no record of that picture. We still have to do some other checks. And one of the biggest ones there, if the reverse image search doesn't work, is to look for visual clues in the image, in the picture or the video that can help us to figure out if this thing is true or it is false. So what are these clues? Number one, signs. Street signs, shop signs, any kind of signs which have text, and it might be in another language. That's something which makes Google Translate very useful, or other online translating search services, of course. But if there are signs in a picture, you can search for any phone numbers that might be on there, any websites that might be on there, the name of the business, and always search for it in the original language. So signs are a really big part of helpful information that you can search for in a picture or video. What else is there? Clothes. What clothes are people wearing? Does that fit with the country or with the region that the story or the person who is sharing this picture or video, does that fit with what they are saying? Do the pictures, do the clothes fit with that? So clothing, any regional dress can provide a kind of a broad starting point. It can give us a broad idea of where we might be looking at, what location this might be. The landscape, are there any mountains or rivers or anything else, or the trees, for example, here? I mean, those trees that we can see in the picture here, that doesn't look like Europe to me. That looks like somewhere slightly tropical. Where exactly is very difficult to tell, but that gives us, again, a kind of a broad starting point for where this might be. What about structures? Are there any tall buildings? Are there any fountains, water towers, anything like that which can help us to identify where this might be? What about the weather? Parts of the world have different types of weather, and as we'll come to in a little bit later, looking at the weather can help us to understand the date as well, because there is always a historical record of the weather on various days, and if someone is saying, and this particular event happened on a certain day, looking at the weather can help us with both the location and the date to understand whether that is true or false. What about insignia? So this is, obviously we've had signs on shops, but flags and signs on people's clothing. We can see this this military personnel here has some insignia on their uniform. That looks to me like the flag for Pakistan. But these things are clues which can help us to identify where it might be. Where else do we have? Vehicles. The types of vehicle, and especially the number plates, can help us to narrow down any locations as well. Sometimes in some countries that might just be help us to find the country. Sometimes it might be help us to find the state in the US as well. So looking at it again, we've got signs, clothes, landscape, so rivers and mountains and things like that. Structures, the buildings, what do the buildings look like? What country, what is the architecture like? Architecture in different parts of the world is very different. What about the weather? What does the weather tell us about where this might be? What do any signs that we see on people's clothes or elsewhere, or flags or vehicles, if it's an aeroplane, if it's a car or something, are there any signs that are on those that might help us to narrow it down? And of course, the license plate on the vehicle that we see here as well. Now, to put this into practice, this was an example from last year. As you can see in the picture, Jenna Musa, who is a very well-respected journalist, she's very good, was looking through some ISIS, some Daesh networks. I believe it was on Telegram, on the messaging app Telegram, on the encrypted messaging app. And there were lots of people looking forward to an announcement by ISIS, and they were sharing their support in these messages written on paper and photographed in various cities around Europe. There was this one, which was, as she says, an ISIS supporter in Paris. With these pro-ISIS messages, the group creates the impression that they have a worldwide network. So there was this photo in Paris. There were others in the Netherlands, in Holland. There was one in London. There was some in Germany. But how do we know if this is true? And understanding if something is true is can be as important as understanding if something is false, especially for journalists. We have to verify that this is in Paris. Is this in Paris? So what kind of signs, what visual clues do we have in that picture? Well, looking at the architecture, it looks like it's in a city. That's quite clear. It looks like the buildings are quite tall. It looks like it could be Western architecture. And in the background as well, we see some vehicles. It would be quite difficult to see the license plate on the vehicles, but we have a shop on the other side of the road there with a shop sign. And then behind, I'm gonna come out of this briefly to show you, but behind the piece of paper here, so again, we've got the vehicles, we've got the architecture, we've got this shop just here, which has a sign, but it might be quite difficult to read. But then this sign here, do you recognize that? What does that look like? Well, when we were looking at this, we thought, that looks like a Suzuki sign. Suzuki being the make of car. So this picture looks like it was taken a Suzuki shop, or a place with lots of, maybe a garage. We're not sure. So if they're claiming that it's in Paris and we can see a Suzuki sign, it is quite straightforward, quite simple, just to do a search for Suzuki in Paris. And as we do that, we can see there on the map, this was in Google, on Google Maps, but there are other mapping services, and we'll come to that later as well. We can see that there are, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 Suzuki shops, or 10 Suzuki outlets, garages, we're not sure at this moment, in Paris. That's not very many. And if you click on these markers here on the map, we can see a close-up of the shop. And looking at the example, the preview that we see on the left-hand side there, looking at it there, it's quite possible that that might be our street. I'm going to go out again here. But if you are in Google Maps, you can use Street View. Now, this is where they go around with their Google cars and they take pictures from street level to show what it looks like. And you see this little yellow man here. If you pick him up and drop him onto the map here, it will have shown in this example, as we did, that that is the street. You can see there is the Suzuki sign that fits with the picture shared by Jenna Musa, shared by ISIS supporters. There is the scaffolding in the background where they were building something and they had that green net. And there is the other street sign that we could see as well. So in some very simple steps, from just searching for Suzuki, from looking at the visual clues in the background of this picture and looking on Google Maps in this case, to see if we could find Suzuki shops in Paris, going to that example, and then going down to Street View to find out where that is. We can see exactly where that photo was taken. And we can, in this case, the authorities, the police were alerted and said, you know, this street in Paris, this address was where this picture was taken. It was very important in both reporting this story, but also in figuring out if this was true as false. And like I said, understanding if something is true is just as important for journalism as understanding if something was false. So what I would like you to do next, we're going to do this. We're going to do this as a practice. I'm going to give you a little exercise to do. This was something which we created at First Draft, a challenge, an observation challenge. And you can find it at bit.ly/FD observation. So I'm going to leave this up and I'm going to give you maybe 5 to 10 minutes to do this challenge. There are 4 questions on the challenge. And you have 4 photographs, and I want you to look at the visual clues in the photograph and see if you can find where it is. You will need to open another window in this. You will, you know, go to a new tab in your browser, go to a new window in your web browser, and go to bit.ly/FD observation. Excuse me, here it is, bit.ly/FD observation. Go there. And then look and see if you can find the location of these 4 different photographs. We'll come to them in a minute, but I'll give you maybe 5 to 10 minutes. It shouldn't take a very long time. And I want you to look for the signs. What signs are there? What are the clothing that you can see maybe? What is the landscape? What structures? What visual clues in the 4 pictures that you see at this bit.ly/FD observation? Find those 4 locations using these techniques that we've talked about. So you will need to go to that web address, bit.ly/FD observation. You will need to open another tab to go there. I recommend you open another tab to search as well, to have the exercise open in one window, and then to look on the map and search for the signs that you see and do the research. This is active practice. So 5 to 10 minutes starting from now. Good luck. And in fact, I'm going to, whoops, that's the first one. I'm going to copy this into the comments on the Hangout. And then you can ask me any questions as we do it. Oh God, excuse me. Right, so go to, if you're in the comments there is the web address. And here are the clues. So 5 to 10 minutes. Go to that exercise. See if you can find the 4 examples, the four pictures which are given there. If you have a question, you can ask it in the comments here as well. I'll still be here. If you have a question, you can ask it in the comments here as well. I'll still be here. Hi, Karine. I see you've just joined. We're just doing a quick exercise in the comments. If you go to bit.ly/fdobservation, then there are some exercises, 4 questions, 4 exercises to research for pictures and looking for any signs, closed landscapes that you see there to try and understand the location. So Farid is getting going. He's got the answer for 1, or he thinks he has the answer for 1. We will do the answers in a minute, but feel free to put them in there if you want. Do you think he, who else we got? Karine and Gayam, do you think he's right? We will see. Oh, God. So remember, when you're looking at the different pictures, what are the signs? Search for the signs. That's the biggest thing in these ones. Okay, so time is up, unfortunately. Let's get back to the presentation, otherwise we will run out of time, but we'll go through some of those answers, and of course you can go back and do that again whenever you like. So continuing with the presentation and the session, we will have a quick look at the, where are we? Lost it. Here we are. So 4 questions, 4 pictures. The first one, which country is this? Looking around, it's a protest about Gaza, it looks like, but in the background there, you can see lots of flags. It's Gazan flags and other clothes, and people wearing perhaps clothes that you might see in Palestine. But if you look in detail, in the top left, you have a magazine, what looks like a magazine cover called L'Humanité, and also the picture there, the sheet they have in the middle is written in French. In the background, that looks like Western architecture, so we can say that yes, that one was France. Number 2, what city is this? Well, there's lots of Chinese signs everywhere, but that law office of David A. Bredin, if you search for the office, and you can also see underneath that there's a telephone number, if you search for both of those things, it will tell you that the city is New York. Number 3, lots of signs, lots of snow, and lots of signs, lots of examples and things that we can search for there. Some French language you might be able to see as well. If you search for those, you'll see that it is Quebec. And the last one, I'm not sure if you got there, is quite difficult. The main sign here, although if we look at the clothes, some as people wearing traditional Muslim or Arabic clothing for women there, but we also see some signs and a bus sign as well. I'm not sure if you got to this one, so I'm going to go past it very quickly. But go back to it if you didn't get around to this one. You can complete that later very quickly. So there's 4 questions, and the 4 ways that we can look for different, looking for visual clues in a picture or in a video to help us figure out where the location is. We can use Google Images, but Google isn't always the best. Sometimes we have to use other online maps, and Yandex in particular is very good for Russia, for Eastern Europe, and for the Caucasus region. It has a lot of detailed mapping, which Google does not have in those areas. It also has street level pictures, which you can explore in the same way as Google, but for Russia, Russian cities, cities in Belarus and in Eastern Europe, again, that Google does not have. So it's very, very useful to do this kind of work if you're looking at those countries, to look at Yandex. Another one that's really good, and this will only be around now for maybe another 6 months. Google have said that they're going to close this, but Panoramio at the moment is very, very good for looking at certain areas and seeing what pictures people have tagged to those locations. There was a story that we were working on once of security guards in Egypt who were shooting at workers at this cement factory. The security guards, I think it was a protest. I might be wrong, so forgive me if I'm a bit wrong, but they were shooting at protesters. And there were no pictures. You know, we saw this one video. There was no street view. It was literally in the middle of the Sinai desert. But on Panoramio, people had taken pictures of this cement factory and put them online, and we were able to geolocate the video and prove that it was true by looking at the location and looking at Panoramio to see if there were pictures of that location already. So it is very, very useful. And you can actually use Panoramio in Google Earth, which is a program. You have to download the program for your computer, but it is free. Google have made it free. If you go to Google Earth Pro and then type in the code GEP free, that will give you, download it for free. And it combines satellite images, and it has street view, and it has Panoramio as well, with all the tagged images in there, to give you a really detailed view of some locations. That's really, really useful. And we can put all this together, all of these questions together. For an example, you might remember from earlier in the course with this video, which showed a bombing in Yemen last year. I'm not going to show the full video because it's not very nice. It's quite a violent video. But looking at the video, okay, I'll do it. There we go. We can put various pieces of information together to figure out that this was in fact true. One part of that is the shadows, and we'll come on to this in more detail in a minute, but there's a website called SunCalc. Now, SunCalc will let you choose any point in the world, any dates in time, and it will show you the direction of the shadows and the length of the shadows at that particular time. Now, looking at this video of this bombing in Yemen, we can see that the shadow of that man pictured there is quite long, and the bombing was supposed to happen at 8 in the morning. So if we choose that location in SunCalc, and then we choose 8 in the morning on that date, we can see that the shadows should have been quite long. We can see the direction that they follow as well, and help us to decide if this is true. Looking around the video as well, we have some trees, we have a road. These are all visual clues, structures and landmarks in the video, which can help us to understand it. We also have some buildings in the background there. We have a building up on the hilltop, and then way in the back we have some mountains. Now, piecing all of these together, we can see that the location is here. That is the precise location of where that bombing happened. That's the road and the trees behind it. That is the other building to the south, the white building. That's the building on the hill. And of course, in the background, we had the mountains as well. Whoops, you can see here up to the north, that's all mountains, which fit with the video as well. Using Google Earth and the pictures from Panoramio, we can actually see that those pictures which people have taken and tagged, which are on Google Earth, you can see the windows are quite unique. They're very distinctive, very distinct windows. We can see those same windows of the building in the video itself, looking at the structures, looking at the visual clues in the picture, in the video, and comparing that with things like, in this case, Google Earth, to find out where it is. For that final check, when we look to the north and we have the mountains, if you are on Google Earth, you know, we can see, if there is no street view, you can see a computer-generated image of what that area looks like, and we can see those mountains to the north as well. So piecing together those visual clues is very important. We are not going to do this now. If you're watching this afterwards, you can pause now. But today, as we are doing this session live, we have not got the time to do this challenge. But people who are watching now, people who are watching later, you can do this challenge as well to help you better understand those mapping tools, and do that later, not now. I'll put this in the comments in the Facebook group, but it's an excellent exercise, really good practice to help you to be better at geolocation. There's another exercise here which I highly recommend, which if you go to bit.ly/FDArcadia you can do a real life example, not just an exercise which we created at First Draft, but this video which was posted of a riot of vandals in South Africa, which someone posted to try and find the location. I will put this in the Facebook group. I encourage you to try and do this exercise and try and find the location, and to discuss in the Facebook group where you think this is, where it happened. But for now, because we're running out of time, we're going to have to move on to the time and the date. Let's look at the time and the date. I apologize for the noise here. It seems some of my neighbors are doing some drilling and some banging, which is not ideal. I hope it'll stop. There we go. So continuing on to the time and the date. Do these exercises at a later time. Continuing on to the time and the date. It is very, very important to understand how different social networks, this is often where a lot of information is shared. It's very important to understand the different way that the different networks show the time. Let's look at Twitter first. When we are on Twitter, excuse me, the time and the date shown on Twitter is the time zone selected in our Twitter settings. So the time shown, if there was a tweet sent now by me, the time on that tweet would be specific to me. If you're looking in a different time zone, it will show a different time. It will always show the time zone selected in your Twitter settings. So Donald Trump, for example, loves to tweet. The time that he tweets, if he tweets at 6 a.m. in New York or in Washington, for him, it will say 6 a.m. For me, it will say maybe, 5 hours ahead at the moment? It will say 11 a.m. If you are in, somewhere further to the east, it will say slightly later. It is the time zone selected in your Twitter settings. For Facebook, however, it's the time zone on your device, on your phone, on your computer, and there is a difference there. When I went to America last, I forgot to change the time zone in my Twitter settings, so it was still showing UK time, but my laptop updated automatically and it was showing New York time, so it was very confusing. But it's important to know how these different networks show the different time. YouTube and Instagram will always, always, always show the time that a picture or video was uploaded or posted, but they will show it in Pacific time. And it's very important to know this as well. You can actually look, as it says here, on YouTube, if you use the Citizen Evidence Lab YouTube data viewer, which is built by Amnesty, you can search for that YouTube data viewer. You can see the exact time that a video was uploaded. On Instagram as well, if you go and look at the embed code will show the exact time as well, but it will always be the time that it was posted. I'm just going to change room slightly because the drilling is getting quite loud. So as I was saying, YouTube and Instagram will always show the Pacific time. So it'll always be at the time of San Francisco, where those companies are based. And this is particularly important because there was a time during if you remember the chemical weapons attack in Syria in 2013. This was a particularly important example of understanding the time and the date around videos or pictures or posts on social media. The chemical weapons attack in Syria. This is an article from Russia Today, I believe it was, and the Russian government, the Russian Foreign Ministry, said that videos posted online about the chemical weapons attack were prepared before the incident. This is the text of the article that you can see there. They said, Moscow continues to monitor closely the events surrounding the alleged, they say, chemical attack near Damascus. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokesman, Alexander Lukasevich, said in a statement. The statement reads, "We're getting more new evidence that this criminal act was of a provocative nature. In particular, there are reports circulating on the internet. There were videos posted to YouTube of this chemical weapons attack. You might remember this. But he says the materials of the incident and the accusations against government troops, remembering, of course, that Russia is an ally of the Syrian government, of Assad, the materials posted and the accusations against government troops have been posted for several hours before the so-called attack." So the chemical weapons attack was reported in the early hours. It was in the very early morning on August the 23rd. Sorry, it was the very early hours of August the 21st in Syria. And they said, the Foreign Ministry said, they believed it was a pre-planned action, and the videos appeared online before the actual chemical weapons attack. And they say that below, the 3 videos posted on YouTube said to show the child victims affected by chemical weapons near Damascus. Despite the date of the alleged attack, August 21st, mentioned in the titles of the videos were posted on YouTube on the previous day, August 20th. The reason that the date on the video said August 20th is because YouTube always shows Pacific time. So when the videos were uploaded in the morning of August 21st in Syria, it was still August 20th in Pacific time. I hope you understand. Syria is a good, 10, 11 hours ahead of San Francisco, ahead of the West Coast of the US. So when the videos were uploaded to YouTube on the morning of August 21st in Syria, YouTube said that the date and the time was on August 20th at night. It's very important to remember that. In this case, Russia, either they didn't know this, they didn't understand this, or they tried to use this to say that the attack was fake. We need, as journalists and as fact checkers, we need to understand this if we're going to be able to get to the truth. So it's very, very important to understand how those different networks have different, display the time in different ways. It's also, of course, important to remember that the social networks show when a video or a file was uploaded. It does not show when it was recorded, just when it was uploaded. But there should be some questions and some things that we can see in the pictures and videos and in the claims, especially around pictures and videos, which should help us here. This tweet was sent during the attempted coup in Turkey last year. But what do we know about the coup in Turkey? Does it fit? Does the picture or the video fit with other reports? Does it make sense with other reports? The picture that we see here is of a lot of tanks on the streets. There are people walking about, but as you can see, this photo was taken during the day. We know that about the attacks, about the attempted coup in Turkey, that it happened at night. So this photo is not of this event. It's just having a think about if it fits with other reports. But there are other things that we can check as well. What does the weather tell us? Like I mentioned earlier, this isn't just about looking at the location. This can help us to understand the date as well. So what does the weather tell us in this example? There's a site called Wolfram Alpha, which can give you some excellent historical data around certain locations and around certain dates. The video that we have in the example here was posted to YouTube and it was showing a fireball. It was a big storm in the US, in Naples, in Florida. And they were saying, you know, this is a storm happening here and now. This is a video from the storm. It's you know, a big fireball was created by the lightning strike in the storm. And they said that it happened on this particular day. Now we need to know, is this true? This was a simple one because it was weather related. But we can see there, if we go to Wolfram Alpha, you can type weather in Naples, Florida, which is the location that the person was claiming. That's important to note. They said they claimed this was in Naples in Florida, October 5th, 2012. Was this actually there? Look in Wolfram Alpha, look at the location and the date, and it says that it was, the weather was rain, thunderstorm, fog, cloudy. The relative humidity was very high. And using that to look at the weather, we can be fairly sure, we can be more sure of the date. We have extra information to help us tell if this date was true. Shadows can help us with the date and the time as well. Like I mentioned earlier, the website suncalc.org, if you choose a location, then SunCalc will, and a time as well, SunCalc will tell you the shadows, and you can look at if there are shadows in the picture or in the video, like the example that I just gave, if those shadows are, if they fit with the truth. Of course, this website SunCalc is very reliable. It's physics, it's science, understanding where the sun will be, how long the shadows will be. So this is a very accurate way of looking at shadows, and that can help us a lot with the time and the date. As I gave in that example earlier, let's go back to it very briefly. This report, the report came in that it happened at 8 in the morning. If it's 8 in the morning, the shadows will be quite long. And by using SunCalc in this example, we can look at the location, choose the time, choose the date, and it can help us to understand whether that video is true or false. Let's go back to where we were quickly. So shadows are very important for the time and the date, but they're also very important for hoaxes as well. Shadows and reflections are something that hoaxers often get wrong. If they want to change a picture or a video and try to show something which isn't true, something which they will often get wrong are the shadows and any reflections as well. Let's have a little example and look at this. This was a tweet, I cut the date off, but this was very recently. This was a week or two in the past. And this person has said, so here's Putin waving at a pigeon and the birds saluting, giving him a salute back. It was shared and retweeted 17,000 times when I took this picture. Let's have a quick look at it. So what do we think? Is this true or false? Well, apart from the fact that, you know, a pigeon, their wings don't move like that, they don't bend like that, they don't look like that, we can also look at the shadow there. When you look at the shadow, there is no shadow for the bird's wing. You can see when Mr. Putin puts his hand out, there is a shadow for his hand. There is no shadow for the bird's wing. And if we look in more detail, I managed to find the video. We can see the video here. When Putin actually waves at it, that's the original. He doesn't wave back. That bird doesn't wave back at all. No wave whatsoever. So that's one thing that we can see here. The shadow is an important part of us being able to look at that this was manipulated. Of course, if we look closely, we can see that it's not a very good hoax. So shadows are important. There's a more advanced way to look at shadows as well. Obviously, as we can see in this example, if the shadow looks very different, like the example here, then we know something strange has happened. This is from a website called 4and6.com, this example. They are excellent at digital forensics for images. I highly, highly recommend them. But if we go forward to look into this in a bit more detail, this is something that you might remember from a few years ago now. It's a very, very good, a very well done hoax. I don't know why these are all birds, but it happens a lot. Oh, shit. So this video was very convincing. A lot of people watched this. A lot of people shared this. I think some news organizations even wrote articles about this video saying, wow, look at this, look what happened. Let's watch the video one more time, and we'll see what might help us to spot what's wrong here. I'll have the sound this time as well. Hopefully. There we go.
Oh shit! Oh. Hey, wat t'en fais, tu correct? Oh ouais, mais là, c'est ça. Oh, ça va? Oh no. Hey,
So, what do we think? Well, again, the big part here, for example, we've highlighted the bird, and as you play it, you can see the bird appearing, and the shadow just arrives out of nowhere. In a minute, I'll show you the tool that can help you to look at things in more detail like this. But the bird just appears from nowhere. That's a very important sign that this was completely faked. If you want to get even more forensic about this, it's important to look at the angle of the shadows. Where is the light source for the shadows? In this example, this is again from 4 and 6. You can see the bottle. It's the same scene, but you can see a bottle on the table for both pictures. Now have a think. Which do you think is true? A or B, the one on the left or the one on the right? Which is true? The shadow for the bottle is in a different direction for both pictures, but which one is the correct one? And more importantly, how do we know? How can we use this information? How can we use shadows to look at it at a real forensic level? Let's take this example. If we draw a line from the object and the shadow, and the line between, say, on the right, the chair, the corner of the chair, and the corner of the shadow. We draw a line from that, a long line, and then we do that for a number of different objects in the room. There we have the corner of the table, and then the corner of the shadow. If we do that for all the objects in the room, or all the objects in a picture, where the lines meet, that is the light source. And we can see in this example for the chair, the 2 lines on the chair, the line on the fruit, the line on the bottle, the line on the table, and the line on the handle of the drawer there by the kitchen. They all meet in the same place. Let's have a look at the other example. If we draw lines on all of the objects there, you can see there is one which is wrong. That one is way off. And that is a sign that this, I mean, obviously it's a computer generation, but that the light source there is wrong. If we want to be really forensic about this, we can do the same thing with our eagle and baby, the video that we just saw, to look at where the light source is, to draw a line from the man and his shadow, from the whatever that is in the kind of the white thing in the background. And you do it for the eagle, and it is different. And the eagle and the baby, in fact, they are wrong. They're out of place. So shadows are one of the things which hoaxers, when they create videos like this, that they often get wrong. And it's the first thing to look for if you see a video that makes you think, wow. This is another one. For some reason, it's a bird again. But this is apparently of a hawk dropping a snake on a family barbecue. Let's watch this.
Oh, there's a hawk. 快看，有一只鸟飞过来了。
一只鸟啊，鸟啊！
哦，
往我们这边跑了，哎，到水里了，到水里了！跑，快跑啊！
快跑，快跑！
Okay, so it's quite a silly video, but as you can see, it was viewed nearly 2 million times. Again, this was something which people wrote about, news organizations wrote about, lots of people believed it. but you need to look at there aren't many shadows in this example, but what you can see is the bird on the top there, and then another bird. Let's go back to the video. Whoops. You can see that there is what we call in English a seagull as another bird in the picture. Now, if there was a hawk, a bird of prey, this bird eats other birds, there would not be some very calm seagulls. There would not be, those other birds would leave, they would go. So what other information is in there that can help us to understand this? That example there, that bird, if the hawk was real, that bird would not be there. Other things which we can see as it flies around, we see in this example, we have the river that is there as well. We should be able to see the reflection. We should be able to see the hawk on the surface of the river as it flies around. That is not there. There's no shadows here, but we should be able to see a reflection. So it's important to think, and if you see a crazy looking video, something that makes you think, wow, remember from the very first session when we talked about the whoa response, there's something that gives you a strong emotional reaction and that makes you think, wow, just to take a minute and think about whether it is true and to look at some of these different techniques, especially around shadows, especially around reflections. If there's, if there's water and a reflection, if there are windows, the reflection on the windows or any shadows that you might be able to see. These are all things which are when people create hoax videos that they often get wrong and are important to remember. One of the best ways, if you're on YouTube, to actually go frame by frame to look at these videos in detail is a Chrome plugin for Google Chrome called Frame by Frame for YouTube, and you can add this to your browser and it will give you extra controls in YouTube to make you look at a video one frame at a time. You can speed the video up, you can slow it down, or you can look at it just at one frame, one picture at a time. And it is very, very useful for looking at some of these videos in a lot of detail. And I can highly recommend that you get that. So that's it for today. We're going to have a little bit more time for questions. But just to recap, looking at the things we had is geolocation, looking at the visual clues that you see in a picture or in a video, looking at the shadows, looking at them frame by frame if you have a video. Next week in session 5, we will be back with some best practices in debunking and communicating the truth, and also tracing the sources of misinformation before we get into breaking news and misinformation with Fergus Bell. Session 7, we've got investigating websites and networks and individuals. And then we'll be looking at elections with Claire Wardle. So we are quite close on time, but of course we do have time for questions. I'll just come out of this and close this. There we go. So does anyone have any questions they want to ask? I can see Farid, you said in the color of the wing is different. If you're talking about the pigeon, absolutely right. The color of it. I mean, it was not a very good hoax there. It wasn't that great. So that was a big clue and well spotted. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, well, if not, then I will be posting the slides in the Facebook group. I'll be posting those exercises which were in this today's session as well, the extra exercises which you can test out. And I look forward to next week and to continuing the discussion in the Facebook group. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.